Okay, so today we're going to talk about renewable energy. Renewable energy is a potentially inexhaustible energy resource on a human timescale. So let's go over that a little bit. A human timescale. A lot of things are renewable. Fossil fuels are even renewable if you have millions of years. On a human timescale, though, once they're gone, they're gone. It takes too long for them to come back. And other things can grow back on a human timescale. That's what we're talking about. So why potentially? Remember the Lorax? Get this out of the way. Some resources are inexhaustible, say wind or solar energy. You can't use up the wind. You can't use up sunlight. Others can be renewed, but not if we use too much or unwisely. Those are things like wood. Obviously, in the Lorax, they chop down all the truffula trees. Water. Clean drinking water is a renewable resource, but we can use it too fast or dirty up what we're not using. Soil. We've talked about that in the past. So let's talk about biomass. Biomass is energy from living organisms, present-day living organisms, not organisms that died millions of years ago. So fossil fuels are not considered biomass. A campfire is using biomass energy. It's the oldest form of energy for civilization. For most of civilization, it was the only form of energy. So, pros for biomass energy. For one, it's abundant. It's easy. Even Stone Age people were able to use biomass energy. It's not something that takes a lot of technology. Carbon dioxide is released when it's burned, but that carbon dioxide is part of the current carbon cycle. It does not directly affect climate change. So let's go into how that works. Remember the carbon cycle we talked about. Plants taking up carbon dioxide and releasing it. Plants take up carbon dioxide, release oxygen. Animals take in the oxygen, release carbon dioxide. And there's more to it. We went into it in quite a bit of detail. Picture the carbon cycle like a bathtub. It's draining just as fast as it's filling. So the water level stays the same. So think about the carbon cycle. The carbon dioxide in the atmosphere stays the same. Biomass is stuff that's alive right now. It's part of the water coming from the tap. So you're not adding any net carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. The layer stays the same. Fossil fuels, on the other hand, are like pouring an extra bucket into the tub. This is all going on, and with fossil fuels, you take a bucket and pour it in here, so that's going to make it go up. So fossil fuels, you're taking carbon dioxide that's been stored, or carbon that's been stored in the underground for millions of years. Literally millions of years worth of carbon stored underground, and we're burning it and releasing it into the atmosphere. That is adding extra carbon, and it's making the level in the atmosphere increase. Biomass is part of the cycle. So, some cons to biomass. It does produce pollution, like carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, particulates, which is basically smoke, and volatile organic compounds. There have been times when, in places where the weather conditions are such that people burning fires in their fireplaces causes huge amounts of pollution in the town. It can also lead to overharvesting of trees. Remember, trees are a potentially renewable resource, but if you cut too many of them down, you cause deforestation, habitat loss. So, some examples. Fireplaces. If you're heating your house with a fireplace, you're heating it with biomass energy. Wood pellet stoves are they're like fireplaces, but instead of putting a whole log on, you put these little wood pellets that you buy. It burns cleaner and longer. You need special stoves for those. If you take charcoal and you grill some steaks outside, that's biomass energy. And ethanol. Ethanol is alcohol. It's the same alcohol that's in beer and wine, and it can be used for a fuel. So let's talk about ethanol. Today, the ethanol that goes into our gas tanks, if you look at the gas pump, it usually says up to some percent ethanol, and it's usually made from corn. Problems with that is if you're taking food and you're turning it into fuel, it's not getting eaten, and that causes the demand for, say, corn to go up, and that causes food prices to rise. Also, when you're talking about food security, farmland is being used for something we aren't eating. That is problematic. If there's a shortage of food and you're growing corn and burning it, basically, that's not very good for food security. And there's a lot of controversy about that. You can get contradictory numbers, but some people say that it's actually 20% worse for global warming than gasoline. Some say it's up to 20% better. Basically, to get enough corn to make a gallon of gasoline, some research shows it actually takes more gasoline to get that gallon of ethanol. You've got farm equipment, you're making fertilizers and herbicides, you're harvesting the corn, you're doing the whole refining process. All of that takes energy, and some research shows it's actually less damaging to the environment to just use gasoline instead. So there's a lot of controversy about it. Farmers obviously love using ethanol for gasoline because they get subsidies from the government and it's a new market for their corn. And if the corn prices go up, that's great for them. Some countries like Brazil, I believe, uses sugarcane to make ethanol. And they get a huge percentage of their energy from sugarcane, from biomass. Another good thing about ethanol, it's biodegradable. If you have an ethanol spill, it's not nearly as bad as having, say, a gasoline spill or an oil spill. It burns cleaner. There's less pollution from ethanol. Okay, so alternatives to making ethanol from corn, it can also be made with algae. Algae grows faster. It takes up less space. And it doesn't compete with food. You don't need to take farmland to grow algae. You just need an area where you can get sunlight. It could be the roof of the house or something like that. Here's a video. I'm going to put this on Schoology for you to watch. We're not going to watch it right now. Okay, so let's talk about solar energy. This is kind of a cool billboard that was up for a while. When there's a huge solar energy spill, it's just called a nice day. Solar energy is energy from the sun, obviously, and it can be collected in many different ways. Here's another one. There's been a huge solar energy spill. Let's go outside and play in it. Okay, so the sun's energy can be converted. You obviously can't recharge your phones just by setting them out in the sunlight. So there's several ways to get solar energy to be useful for our civilization. One is just capturing the thermal energy, the heat energy. You can use this to produce hot water for hot water heaters and swimming pools. You've probably seen these. It looks like a solar panel on the roof of a house, but it's not producing electricity. It just has hoses going back and forth, heating up, and that can heat the water in your hot water heater. Houses can be set up to specifically capture heat from the sun to help heat the house even in the winter. And you can take thermal energy from the sun and convert that into electrical energy. In this case, you're using the sun to heat water to steam, and that turns a turbine to power a generator to make electricity. The US has some, not very many, and some of them have closed recently because photovoltaic cells, which we'll talk about soon, have gotten cheaper, and they can't compete with those. This is what I was going to take y'all outside to experiment with, setting things on fire with magnifying glasses. And those of you that were in class that day, remember I showed you a video where if you have a large enough magnifying glass, and I have one that's about 3 feet across, You can set 2x4s on fire. You can melt pennies. You can melt glass. It gets incredibly hot just from about a square meter or so. So, thermal energy plants take mirrors all around an area, and using computers, they focus the mirrors to reflect the light of the sun right up here. That gets incredibly hot, hot enough to boil water, turn it into steam, and that steam can turn turbines. Okay, so the sun's energy can also be converted directly to electricity using photovoltaic cells. These are what you're familiar with seeing on calculators, on street signs, and things like that. Okay, so photovoltaic cells are used in calculators, buoys in the ocean, school speed limit signs, homes and businesses. Basically places where you can't just plug it into the wall. You can't plug an ocean buoy into the wall. It's out a long way from the grid. Street signs. Sometimes you put up a street sign. It's a whole lot easier rather than trying to tap into a power line somewhere to just plug it into a solar panel. So how do they work? Simply put, photons knock electrons from one layer of silicon with some impurities to another. This builds up electrical potential energy, and if you connect the two by wires, you get electric current. Okay. So here's an animation showing how that works. Let's get rid of this. All right, so using silicon, move this down a little bit. So here you go. You have light coming in, and it knocks electrons from one layer to the other. And they flow through the wire to get back to the original layer, and that produces electricity, an electric current. And obviously you get more light, you get more electrons being knocked from one side to the other. And you have a stronger current. Okay, so this is something that came out about 4 years ago, and their advertisement was so great it actually went viral. I'll let you watch the video and we'll talk about some of what's happened since then. Maybe.
Solar freaking roadways.
What are they?
They're solar freaking roadways. What do they want from me? Well, they're solar freaking roadways. Okay, so actually this time, what is it? It's technology that replaces all roadways, parking lots, sidewalks, driveways, tarmacs, bike paths, and outdoor recreation services with solar panels. And not just lifeless, boring solar panels. Smart, microprocessing, interlocking, hexagonal solar units. No more useless asphalt and concrete just sitting there baking in the sun, needing to be repaved and filling with potholes that ruin your axle alignment on your sweet ride, bro. These are intelligent solar panels. Replace a panel at a time if damaged or malfunctioning. They're covered with a new tempered glass material that has been designed and tested to meet all impact, load, and traction requirements. Oh, and did I mention that they're also solar panels? They generate electricity. They generate capital. They pay for themselves, and they keep paying more because we're not going to run out of sun for like 15 billion years. That lowers the cost of energy, unlike those bills in the mail that keep going up. And it's clean energy. Everyone can theoretically drive an electric car with no pollution and a minimal carbon footprint. Can you imagine how good our cities would smell? How much healthier we'd all be? Excuse me, young man. Am I being led to believe that this thing is some sort of thing? Yes, it's a thing, a real thing. And clean energy is only its primary function. Grab a notepad, because this is where it gets interesting. For those in the north, the panels use energy they collect to power elements to keep the surface temperature a few degrees above freezing. They're heated. No more ice and snow on roads causing traffic delays, accidents, and injury. No more shoveling your driveway and sidewalk. No salt corroding your car or wasting tax money on snow removal. And you can ride your bike or drive your motorcycle all year round. Whoa! Every panel has a series of LED lights on the circuit board that can be programmed to make landscape designs, warning signs, parking lot configurations, whatever. These roads never have to have lanes repainted, just reprogrammed to whatever we choose or whatever works best. Imagine a highway road lighting up ahead of you. How much safer it would be to drive at night. There'd be improved visibility for pilots landing on solar landing strips. Imagine walking onto a solar recreation court and choosing a sports configuration. Want to play basketball? Cool. Kids want to play hopscotch and foursquare? Awesome. Ball hockey? Done. And with LED lights under your feet, it's going to look like freaking Tron out there. But real, because this is the real world. Whoa. But these panels are also pressure sensitive, so they can detect when large debris like branches or boulders have fallen onto the road, or if an animal is crossing. It can warn drivers with LED text to slow down for an obstruction. I'm very, environmentally conscious. Good, because solar roadways use as much recycled material in their production as possible. Plus, the roadways have two channels that form what's called a cable corridor that runs concurrently with the roadways themselves. One part houses electrical cables, meaning power lines, data lines, fiber optics, and high-speed internet, which replaces the need for telephone poles and hanging wires that can be damaged during storms, causing power outages, or become extremely dangerous if severed either as fallen live wires or buried cables. The other channel captures and filters storm water and melted snow, moving them either to a treatment facility or treating them on-site, greatly decreasing the amount of pollution that enters our soil, lakes, rivers, and oceans. I'm kinda broke, bro. Yeah, no kidding. The economy is in the toilet. Do you realize how many thousands of jobs this could create and sustain? Talk about a hypodermic adrenaline shot to the heart of the manufacturing and infrastructure sector. And it pays for itself. They're solar freaking roadways. I have concerns about the future. Is this thing even possible? I told you, yes. Solar roadway technology was invented by engineering couple Julie and Scott Broussard in 2006. Two of the sweetest people in the world who met when they were 3 and 4 years old. Listen to these two.
Hi, we're Scott and Julie Broussard, inventors of solar roadways.
We met in the 1960s when we were 3 and 4 years old.
These wonderful, intelligent people want to begin manufacturing a technology that can power the future of the whole freaking planet. They were awarded a contract from the Federal Highway Administration to build 2 prototypes, which are now complete. They're too humble and wonderful to yell at you over the internet, so I'm gonna do it. You need to know about this technology. You need to get behind it. You need to share it with everyone you know, because this is actually happening. Whoa! For the first time in human history, we have the technology to do what nature has done since the beginning of life on this planet. Harness the power of the sun to fuel our pursuits. And this isn't about filling a field with solar panels wasting land. Our roads and parking lots are just sitting there, reflecting sunlight and absorbing heat, not doing nothing for nobody. Which I guess means it's doing something for somebody, but not very much. It's time for an upgrade. We have to make the changes we want to see in the world. The FHWA has provided the startup funds to create the prototypes, but now a grassroots effort of concerned and inspired people can push this project into independent production. If we vote with our money for projects we believe in, we can create a future where our society is driven by new ideas. It need only begin with private driveways and parking lots. Once the ball gets rolling, it'll create a momentum all of its own. Let's put our roads to work. Not to mention, it's finally gonna look like the freaking future out there! City streets, driveways, sidewalks, and schoolyards glowing with LED panels? Are you kidding? Imagine street festivals, imagine Mardi Gras, imagine the Movement Electronic Music Festival in downtown Detroit, but all the concrete and hard plaza has been replaced with pressure-sensitive panels with multicolored lights in them. I would lose my mind. And not to mention, the freaking solar panels! It has been estimated that if all the roads in America were converted to solar roadways, the country would generate 3 times as much energy as it currently uses. Think about that. An abundance of clean energy. So quickly, in review, love biking? Solar roadway. Hate high energy bills? Solar roadway. Love the movie Tron? Solar roadway. Worried about the economy? Solar roadway. Love sports? Solar roadway. Scared of hitting moose? Solar roadway. Hate gasoline prices? Solar roadway. Love helping developing countries? Solar roadway. Hate tar fumes? Solar roadway. Love recycling? Solar roadway. Hate winter driving? Solar roadway. Hate shoveling snow? Solar roadway. Love clean air? Solar roadway. Need a job? Solar roadway. Want to save this planet and make it sustainable for your kids and all future generations of life who can look back and say, hey, at least they invented solar freaking roadways? Please follow the link to Indiegogo.com. Meet Scott and Julie Broussard, check out their work, and get informed. This isn't just donating, it's an investment in a real future. Let's do this, because finally, it's possible. Well, I wish. Thank you. And I could not see.
Okay, so this is a thing, and their website is still active. It's solarroadways.com. So far, the results have not been incredibly promising. They're kind of expensive. They're not very efficient. Roads are difficult, not very efficient places for solar panels. Solar panels usually do better if they're at an angle. They do better if they're clean. Roads don't usually stay clean. Leaves fall on them, dirt falls on them, oil, all of that stuff is going to block the light getting to the roads. Some people suggest we've got roofs on houses. You could put solar panels up there and they don't need to be driven on. So if we replaced all the roofs with solar panels, it would be a lot easier and a lot more efficient. So the comic that I've talked about before that I really like, called XKCD, had made a flow chart to figure out whether you should put solar panels on something. So let's plug road in here. Does it move around? No. But is there an empty space nearby where it would be easier to put them? Yes. Fields, roofs, anything basically would be easier than putting them on the road. So the answer comes up, probably not. Just to give another example, like cars. People say, why don't we put solar panels on cars? Does it have a regular chance to recharge or swap batteries? Yes, you can recharge cars pretty easily, so it's not a great place. Houses way out in the wilderness. Does it move around? Is there an empty space nearby? It would be easier to put them. You can put them on the roof of your house, sure. So, yeah. Okay, so solar power has its drawbacks. It's not useful in all areas of the world. You definitely wouldn't get a whole lot of electricity in parts of Washington State, Seattle, where it rains an awful lot. Places like here would be great for solar energy. We have lots of sunlight. It takes a lot of land for solar power plants. The thermal solar power plants fry anything that comes too close to the mirrors, the focus point. The amount of daily sun is not constant. It's not a consistent source of energy. Even places like New Mexico, we get lots and lots of sun, but we still have cloudy days sometimes. Okay, so the next presentation I load up will be about wind. So we'll go ahead and stop here. Have a good day and stay safe.